Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on my channel. I wanted to share with you today some tips and tricks on how to minimize the appearance of texture while you're wearing makeup. So as you can see, I have some nice little breakouts going on right now. I also just kind of have general texture on my face. Under my eyes, I have milia, which are like little white bumps that basically don't serve any purpose other than to be texture. And I also have some fine lines on my forehead and also around my mouth, so those create texture when putting on foundation. So the first thing that you have to do is incorporate exfoliating into your skincare routine. Find something gentle enough that you can use every day. Exfoliating is going to make such a huge difference in how smooth your face looks. So you just want to use like a quarter size of the product, and with water you want to rub it all into your skin. Obviously I'm simulating the process here. Don't forget to exfoliate your eyebrow area as well, because that can sometimes get texturized. And then of course rinse it off. You can do this right in the shower every morning. The next steps here are going to be directly related to your makeup routine. So you need to use a moisturizer before you go to bed, but also you need to put moisturizer on before you put on makeup. So I like to use one that is oil free, and I'll kind of explain more of that later. But you want to work this all over your face, and then I'm not rubbing hard, I'm just trying to distribute the product. Then you're going to see me start patting it into my skin. The reason for that is because if you are rubbing your skin vigorously, whether it's with hands or a towel or a makeup brush, you can actually cause what's called microexfoliation, which is going to lift off any dry flakes or texture on your skin, which is going to, of course, make it look like you have more texture on your skin when you apply foundation. So I'm just taking an extra measure here to make sure that if any skin flakes have lifted off, I'm pressing them back down onto my skin to create a smooth surface. And then I'm going to let that moisturizer soak in. If you have dry skin, I recommend that you use a primer similar to this one. It's a silicone-based one. This one is a pore eraser. If you have oily skin or combination skin, I recommend that you use more of a lotiony type of primer or a mattifying primer. Either way, primers are just really nice for creating an even skin base before you put on your foundation. So I'm going to use the Stay Matte primer, and I'm just using like a pea size, like such a small amount goes such a long ways. And again, you're going to see me patting this into my skin, and I'm just placing this in the areas where I get oily. So for me, that's just the sides of my nose, the center of my forehead, and my chin. And I'm just going to pat that into my skin. So again, I'm not creating that micro exfoliation, but I am pushing down any skin that might be lifted up. I know it sounds gross, but you kind of have to work those flakes back down so that they're flat on your skin. And then since I have combination skin, I'm going to take that smoothing primer and just work it into the outer perimeter of my face. And I'm kind of concentrating on my breakout areas. And again, I'm going to let that soak in. One of the most important things for minimizing texture is using a matte foundation. If you have oily skin, I recommend the Infallible Pro Matte. If you have dry skin, I recommend the Matte and Poreless. It does say it's for normal to oily skin, but I have found that it looks nice on dry skin as well. And then you're going to want to use a damp sponge to apply your foundation, not a brush, because again, we're going to be creating micro exfoliation, which is going to lift off any dry or dead skin cells. And even if you try to apply your foundation with your fingers, once again, it's creating that exfoliation. We want to do the exfoliating over the sink or in the shower where we can rinse off the dead skin cells, not when we're about to put on our makeup. Using a sponge to press the foundation into our skin is going to create a smooth appearance by pressing down anything that may have been lifted up or any dry patches or any texture that we're dealing with. The sponge is pressing the product into that area instead of just rubbing product all over an already sensitive area that may have dry flakes. For concealer, you're going to want to stick to something that's matte. I recommend the Catrice Liquid Camouflage. This is good for oily skin and dry skin, and it's a very affordable drugstore price. I'm going to be using the MAC Pro Longwear today. I don't recommend this for dry skin because it is a little more drying, but I like the coverage of this one, and it does dry down matte. And you just need the tiniest amount. So I'm just using this concealer for extra coverage under my eyes, and I find that since it does dry down quickly and it dries down matte, it does help to minimize that texture that's under my eyes, that milia, as opposed to using a concealer that has more of a radiant or luminous finish, which is going to make those bumps look more obvious. I want my concealer to be matte, just like my foundation. I used the lighter concealer for the center of my face, and I'm going to use this darker concealer for my breakout areas, which are more on the outer perimeter of my face. If I use a light concealer on these spots, it's just going to highlight them and bring them forward. So I want this concealer to blend pretty well with my foundation color. So I'm just putting it on the breakout area and then just using my finger to very gently and lightly blend out the edges of that concealer. So I'm getting coverage, but I'm not making the area more obvious. And then I'm going to set all that concealer with just a small amount of powder. If you have dry skin, you don't necessarily need to set your whole face, but I do recommend setting at least your under eye area. I'm going to set everywhere that I put concealer just because I do have more of an oily skin type, so I want to make sure that my concealer doesn't move at all throughout the day. So I'm just going to lightly powder all of the areas that I did put that concealer. And this is just with the foundation, concealer, and setting powder. I'm going to jump off camera and do my bronzer and blush. I used a matte bronzer and a matte blush, and you could totally skip the highlighting part if you deal with a lot of texture or large pores on your cheeks, but I'm going to show you how you can put a little bit of radiance in your skin while still minimizing the appearance of texture. So I'm using a dual fiber fan brush just because I find that it applies the highlighter a little more sheer. Now you want to avoid putting too much highlighter on your face, so instead of doing that C shape that you see a lot, just place it on the very tops of your cheekbones. Avoid that area on your lower cheek that has a lot of pores, especially if you have large pores in that area. Just keep this to the very tops of the cheekbones to put a little bit of radiance back into your skin, since we've used matte everything. And then I'm also going to put it on my Cupid's bow, again avoiding that breakout area, and then the tip of my nose and down the bridge of my nose. And I got a little carried away with how much highlighter I put there, so I'm just kind of blending it out so that it's not too crazy, and then I'm done. I'm not going to put highlighter anywhere else on my face. So this is the base of your makeup. This is how you get coverage without bringing extra emphasis to the texture on your skin. So what I'm going to do now is show you all the products that you should not use when you're dealing with a lot of texture on your face. But please keep in mind that there's nothing wrong with these products. They're great products. I recommend them. But if you are dealing with a lot of texture on your face, they might be products that you want to avoid. The first thing I'm going to do is use an oil-based moisturizer, and I'm just going to vigorously rub this all into my skin. An oil-based moisturizer is going to cause my face to just look a little more shiny, a little more luminous, and luminosity is going to bring textured areas more forward. So I am then going to go in with my Magic Lumi Light Infusing Primer, and again vigorously rub that all into my skin. And I'm not taking the time to let any of these products soak in. I'm just kind of slapping one product on top of the next, which is not letting it soak into my skin, and it's just going to cause my products to kind of cake up. And for foundation, I'm using a glowy foundation, and I'm going to be blending that out using a brush. And basically when I'm using a brush to apply my foundation and I have texture issues, I'm just exfoliating my skin. Except that I'm not rinsing away all of the dead skin flakes. I'm basically just mixing my dead skin cells in with my foundation, which is not going to be smooth and it is not going to look nice. And here I'm using the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer, which is a great concealer if you don't have texture issues, but it's a very radiant and luminous concealer. So I'm placing that in the center of my face, and I'm just going to blend that out. I didn't have any clean concealer brushes handy, so I am just going to use my sponge to blend all that into my skin. And I'm not setting any of that concealer with powder, so I'm going to jump off camera here and do my bronzer and blush. I don't have a shimmery bronzer, so I did use my matte bronzer, but then I did grab a blush that had a little bit of shimmer in it. And for highlighter, I'm grabbing one of my super intense kind of glittery highlighters, and I'm going to be placing that all over the high points of my face, so kind of in that C shape around my eye, on my brow bone. I'm not trying to avoid any of my breakout areas at all, and I'm using a dense brush to apply my highlighter. I'm not exaggerating when I'm putting this much highlighter on. Like, this is typically the amount of highlighter I see people putting on, like on Instagram or their YouTube channels. Heck, I've even put this much highlighter on before, which is fine as long as you have a smooth base to put that highlighter on. But again, we're talking about texture issues, so if you have issues with textured skin, there is no way this much highlighter is going to look good on you, and especially a highlighter that has chunks of glitter in it, it is just not going to be flattering. And I didn't mention a setting spray before, but you want to use a matte setting spray and not a dewy finish setting spray, because again, we're just creating a super luminous base, which just highlights texture. It just does. I'm so sorry. It looks beautiful if you have perfect skin, but for the rest of us, most of us in the world, we have to be a little more selective about the products that we use to minimize the appearance of texture. So here is the matte look that we did first, and you can see just how much less obvious it is that we're dealing with some skin issues. And then here is the more dewy, luminous skin finish, which just highlights all of our skin issues. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic day.